Okay, we're going to get started. We're going to get represented as time as possible. Presenter is Bracken Moss back here? Okay. From Instructure.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Bracken. We're talking about Common Cartridge. The 4 R's is just like link bait to get us to accept it. So I'll mention it, but it's not. So I'm a software engineer at Instructure. I also work along IMS standards, one of which is Common Cartridge, and that's actually why I'm here more as a Common Cartridge evangelist than for Instructure. I've been an OER fan for a couple of years ever since I learned about it. I'm also a big soccer fan, and I did this at InstructureCon too, but last night there was an RSL game, a playoff game, and we won. And when I'm watching games at home, I'm always, when our team wins, I blow the vuvuzela. And I didn't get to do that last night because I was at home. I was at the game. So I just need to get this out of my system real quick. That's my daughter.
We're trying to run a conference in here.
It's also very useful for summoning the wily. Alright, so there's a lot of data out there in the world, not just OER stuff, and it's in a million different formats. You know, teachers use so many different tools. Web pages, blogs, wikis, social networks, a million different LMSs, tons of different things. The problem is you want to try to move this stuff around, but you can't really move it around. You're copying and pasting HTML, and it's just really tricky. And I'm saying that Common Cartridge is a potential solution to this in lots of these arenas, making stuff actually workable and useful. And so that's what I'm advocating here. I always think, when I see CC, I think Common Cartridge. I have problems here whenever I see CC everywhere. I keep thinking, oh, everyone's excited about Common Cartridge like I am. They're not. I've got so many stickers, so I'm going to kind of go over the who, what, when, where, why, how. Is that in the right order? Doesn't matter. It's how it is in the slides. So of Common Cartridge, and get to that real quick. So who is IMS Global? There's a standards consortium, not consortium, standards body who make a bunch of educational standards. One of them is Common Cartridge, LCI, you've probably heard of. QTI is quiz interoperability. Now LIS, and they've got a bunch of other stuff that they work on. I'm an active participant there with LTI and Common Cartridge. And there's been a lot of industry people pushing IMS standards in general, also Common Cartridge, LMS vendors, and also content vendors pushing this kind of stuff and making it better. There haven't been many people from the open education world pushing on these. And that's kind of me, that's my evangelism I'm doing right now, basically, as with a foot in both of these worlds. So, it is an XML-based standard for content. There's lots of metadata you can throw in there, stuff that's interesting to this group, particularly as licensing, both at the whole package level, also at the individual resource level. So you can say my whole thing is, CC by, but this little piece of content is from, somewhere else. And that's nice. It could be inside the cartridge there. And then something that's interesting to our customers a lot is standards tagging. That could be Common Core standards. There's another CC that I messaged me of. Common Core standards, right? Anyway.
Yeah.
You can tag stuff in there. Already vendors, you could use your own GUIDs to tag content in there and move it around, and it just moves around the content. And that, again, is at the whole package level and the individual item. And then you can have an overall organization of your content in there. It could be a single item, it could be a whole course, it could be a learning module with 5 items, stuff like that. You can represent that in there. And the current top-level items in Common Cartridge, the things it thinks about are web links, just a link to anything, discussions, quizzes, LTI links, assignments are new, and then files, which is really, anything. So HTML files are the most common, but you can do anything. And again, metadata for each resource. Common Cartridge kind of has a bad rap, deservedly so. A lot of people will go to one system, export it into Common Cartridge, and they import it somewhere, and all they got was some discussions and a few wiki pages, right? That's because, hey, it ran perfectly. So the version of Common Cartridge most people support is LCI, Common Cartridge 1.1. And it didn't have the concept of assignments, for example. And so when people export their Common Cartridge, there's no assignments in there. And teachers think a lot in assignments and they lose it. And so basically they see Common Cartridge as useless because assignments don't come, which is mostly true. But me and lots of others are really pushing on the standards. And in Common Cartridge 1.2 is when they added all that standards tagging. Common Cartridge 1.3 was just barely released. And it has a lot of really interesting things like extensions. You can add new types, and that's what the assignment is one of those. You have multiple question banks. So you can really move the cartridges around. Before you had to have a zip file with all this complicated stuff in there. Now you can have a single XML file that describes your whole course. If you need to embed, you need to have images or something, you're going to use a zip file, of course. But you just put all your content in a single file, and it's really easy to send around and exchange. That's something I'm really excited about. It added more metadata, and then right now I'm pushing really hard to add some more stuff for Common Cartridge 1.4, and I think in the next 4 to 6 months I'm going to get it out there. And this will be the next step of actually making it very useful between learning management systems, for example, because you can, with this, you're able to mark anything as gradable. A lot of people like to have discussions that are gradable, for example, and that concept doesn't exist in current Common Cartridge, and I'm going to make that exist. And then just availability dates, more extensions, and LTI2 support. That's the stuff that's coming up, and it just really raises the level of what's useful in Common Cartridge. So where, I didn't have anything for where. Courtesy of Devin Daily joke. So why? Why gets back to this. We want to interchange all this content. We don't want to put it somewhere and have it stuck there. We want to actually move it. So portability is the number one. And then here's the only mention of the 4 R's. Again, that was just link bait, so they would select me. So
Better do better, Greg.
So LTI is super popular. I'm a huge LTI advocate, and I write libraries for it and really push LTI stuff. But right now, a lot of content vendors, both proprietary ones and OER ones, are using LTI to kind of lock in their content, basically. It's like, hey, we have all the stuff in our system, and it's open and available if you link to it here when you do an LTI launch, right? So it's actually on their system, and you can't pull it out without the normal copy and paste or whatever. It's like actually protected in there. And from an OER perspective, I don't really like that. The purpose of LTI is tools. Going to some cool interactive thing that your vendor's not going to implement because it's specific to some physics thing, That's great, these tools, but I don't think it's as great for content because we actually want to move them. There's great use cases for content too, but that's can be used to lock stuff down. And Common Cartridge is a way to actually share the content and make it actually reprehensible. So it's in your system you're using. I'll get to that soon. So how? Got a couple things on how. First is push vendors for support. A lot of LMSs support up to version 1.1, like I said. But there's really good stuff in the new versions, and we need to push people to have that. It'll increase everyone's portability. Push the OER community. That's what I'm doing right now. We have a lot of vendors. Sailor Foundation just walked in. They're going to be converting all their stuff to Common Cartridge soon, and that's great. I think Connections has some Common Cartridge stuff. And that really increases the level of interoperability. And so we just need to push and request that stuff, not just where we're paying with our vendors, but in our community and other stuff. I think the open education program needs to participate more in actually improving these interoperability standards. We talk about interoperability, but I don't see a lot of movement of actually saying, here's standards and the ways to do that. I'm not as active in our community as well. You guys are. I don't see it much, and I think that needs to increase. I might be wrong. And then make actual tools. Not every single one of us needs to make tools, but I'll get to that in a minute. So I think making tools is great. So here's my real dream of how to do this, is that you don't actually have to do anything. You know, if me as a vendor and us as providers, if I had it was all magical, you would just go around doing your own thing. You're in your LMS, building your course, and by having built it, you have built an OER that's portable because your LMS exports Common Cartridge and it's tagged correctly with the correct things. You know, you're not thinking, oh, I'm going to go get an OER, I'm going to tag this correctly. It's just you're building your course and then it's available. So that's what I want. That's the end goal for me. Is like it just I call it make OER happen by accident. And I think Common Cartridge makes that possible if we build the right tools and have the right participation. Whereas it's much harder if you don't have a standard to do that. Okay. So some examples. So since it was Canvas, we worked really hard to make it easy to put content into Canvas. We have like, you know, you can anybody can add a button to our WYSIWYG editor that goes to a content repository and it's content. That's kind of by accident. It's like, oh, here's a button that goes to Flickr, and I'm going to put content in here. That's cool, right? And we try really hard to do that. It's just, you know, and then examples are right now you can move content between LMSs with Common Cartridge. The bar is pretty low there, and it's not great, and that's something I'm going to push to make better. That's a good example. Content vendors to LMSs. This is both the OER ones, like I mentioned, connections and Sailor and stuff like that, but also the big guys. You know, a lot of people we're trying to preach to basically are in LMSs at big schools, pulling stuff from Pearson and Cengage, right? And they're going to have that stuff. But we still want them to not have to have it locked behind LCI. We should push and make it so they can have Common Cartridge. And even though this might be proprietary Cengage content, teachers should still be able to tweak it, I think, you know. And if it's LCI, that's not going to happen. It's Common Cartridge, they can still do that. And it's still within the realm of what they're allowed to do under the contract there. You know, so even if it's not in the OER world, you can still push it and make it better. And then, so I'm going to go over some more concrete examples now. So in structure, we need to be able to import from Moodle, but Moodle 1.9 doesn't have a Common Cartridge export. They have their own custom little thing. And so when we went to create an importer for Moodle 1.9 things, we decided instead to make a converter of a Moodle package to a Common Cartridge package. And it's up on GitHub. And so you take a Moodle thing, you spit it through this tool, and then you've got a Common Cartridge package. And then we import that into Canvas. You know, we do it all behind the scenes. They just upload their Moodle thing, and we do this for them behind the scenes to make it easy. But that's a really good example of a tool. You know, we can have the same kind of things for any kind of content. We're soon we'll be working on a Moodle 2 version of this same thing. Moodle 2 exports Common Cartridge, but again, it's that very low bar where they only put a few things in it, and it's not very good. Don't want to trash talk too much, but so we're going to make Moodle 2 one, and you know, I think that'll be cool.
Got ETA on that?
It's next on my list.
Okay. It's on the road.
Talk to me when I'm on the land.
No.
I'm off camera. So I think I made so I presented on something similar to this at InstructureCon a few months ago. And I made a utility for converting a WordPress blog into a Common Cartridge. There's a lot of teachers who use WordPress not just for blogging, but they actually host their content on it. And that's great, and people should do that. But maybe they want to switch to an LMS, or maybe they want to make it into some other content format, something like that. They want to move it somewhere. And this is kind of my tool to do that. So this is a very great, this is a very specific use case. I didn't find a great education blog. I should have taken David Riley's or something. But my coworker has a food blog for Salt Lake City, and he gave me an export of his WordPress blog. So he just goes around. Apparently he eats like every other day. And so he gave me an export of this, and I run it through my thing, and then to Common Cartridge, and I import it to Canvas. And what I chose to do, you know, you have to be very flexible, is each of these posts has a category. I think that's what it's called in there. And so for every category, I took all the posts in there and made them a learning module within Canvas. So for example, you know, he's got Mexican and Southwestern was one of his categories in there, and I just took all those posts and made a learning module out of it. And when you go in these, you know, I did this really quick, that's why it's not very pretty. I don't do pretty, I just do functional. Other people do pretty. So this is his blog post about Lone Star Taqueria, highly recommend it. You know, and this is a post about, I don't know what, I'm not going to pronounce it.
That's great.
I speak Spanish. So, you know, it's just plopped in here, but it's nice. It's now in here, and so it's more portable than before, right? Yes?
So it's not a WordPress plugin. You do a WordPress export,
Yep.
and then.
Yep. You could make it a WordPress plugin that exports thing, if you wanted to program in PHP.
Zealot purist.
I think he resembles that.
This isn't a programming conference. I shouldn't make jokes like that. So that's an interesting thing. And the point I'm trying to make is that it's a very good, the way I envision it, it's as an intermediary format. You know, you store it somewhere, and then if you want it over here on your blog, you convert it to that. If you want it in your LMS, you put it in there. If you want it in different ways, you do that. You know, it's since it's a standard, it's easy to build tools to do these conversions, and that's great. And then this week, I've been working on something awesome all week instead of preparing my slides so as to not embarrass myself. So I built something awesome instead of having awesome slides. Practicing what I'm preaching, I guess. I took one of the Lumen Learning Introduction to Psychology courses, and I wrote a utility that takes a common cartridge and converts it. My initial plan was just to convert it to HTML, so like a web page, right? Take something and make a web page out of it. And then I found out on Wednesday that epub is actually pretty easy to make. So I made a utility that takes Common Cartridge to HTML or epub. And so I took this course, exported it from Canvas. I went backwards somehow. I exported it to Canvas and ran it to my tool and made an epub. A very ugly epub. Again, I don't do pretty. So here's the course, though. You can see like intro to psychology. It's got these sections in there. You can go in here and check out the content. It's got a little framework because it's a framework. You know, it's got all the stuff. And so this is my result of running it through. So this is an epub. I'm reading it in Calibre. I don't know what that is. And you can see it doesn't have those correct module groupings yet. You know, I'm only so fast. But I have all the stuff in here, and so normally I would make each of those modules a chapter with subsections, right? But so here's that same page we were looking at, but now it's in epub format. You know, just go to the next page. You know, it's all that same content, but in a book. And so I mean, that's pretty cool. You know, and the way I look at it is like you've got this core.
You did
content.
that this week?
Yeah, it's really crappy.
Wow. I'm impressed.
It's really bad. It's on GitHub too. I'll go there. So here it is on GitHub. It's really bad. Don't look at the code. The point is, you've got this core content, right? And I think teachers, should be able to use that in the way they want. You know, they're going to be using an LMS, so they're going to import it in there. But some other course, some other context, they're not going to have internet access or something. So it's like, hey, the same content translates perfectly into an ebook. And stuff I want to do with this still is like, there's quizzes in Common Cartridge, and just automatically put those in text in there, and then you can save the answers for the back of the book if you want, or make a teacher and student edition from the same exact stuff that you're putting into your LMS. You could make an ebook that makes sense as an ebook, a course that makes sense as a course from the same stuff. Licensing stuff goes along with it, and so that's my grand magical vision. You can move stuff everywhere. It's not going to happen really easily or quickly, but I think we can take little small steps towards that. If you're not a programmer, you can't make these tools, but you can still push vendors to increase their, for example, Common Cartridge support. There's other standards up there that we should also be pushing on and making these interoperable. That's something that this community can do. Not if you're just a programming nerd that likes to move stuff. So here's a bunch of links.
The one at the
have 4 hours. I still have 5 minutes, so if you've got questions, I'll answer them. I'm going to blow the vuvuzela again.
What's the granularity? Course, module, how far down does it go? How big does it get?
So within a common cartridge, you don't have to have any kind of organization at all. So it could just be a bucket of stuff. And then you can have a learning module, which would have 5 items, for example, and then you can build it up to a whole course, or maybe a series of learning modules.